and welcome back to Mel's Quirky Corner, the YouTube edition. Today, this has been something that everyone has been super excited about, so we are going to talk about resin. This is going to be multiple parts, and I am going to try to get as much information into one video as I can, but with resin, I sometimes will just think of things, and so I just want to make sure I give you all the information that I can. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the comments or just reach out to me. My inbox is always open on all of my platforms, and I'll get you the help, or try to get you any answers that you, to the questions that you may have. So, let's get into it. I personally use Art and Glow resin. I use, as you can see, I definitely go through Art and Glow quite a bit. I also have a discount code, so I will put that into the comments. So if you want to save some money, it's MQC15. And so the reason that I went with Art and Glow, I had tried Dr. Crafty, I had tried Tumbler Epoxy, I had tried CC DIY, I had tried KS, like I tried all of the resins, and the one thing that I found, so I have a ton of medical issues, like I am allergic to everything. I have some autoimmune disorders, like I have a lot of medical issues, and so when I got into resin, I wanted to make sure I was doing something that was not going to harm me, wasn't going to harm my animals or my husband, and it also was not going to harm any of my customers. I researched and I tried all these different ones. And the one thing that I kept finding is that they would have like a super strong odor, or there was a lot of yellowing, especially on white cups. White tumblers are so hard to keep that really bright white. And so I was just having a ton of issues with all the other epoxy resins that I was using, and so I tried Art and Glow and I fell in love. It was like an instant, I knew that was going to be my go-to, on top of it being food grade resin, so that's going to be the safest for the customers. And there are other FDA food grade resins. This is just the one that I endorse and I enjoy working with. It is a self-leveling resin, which means, so when you're doing, let's say that you want to do tumblers, which are behind me, so when you're turning it, it's going to be easier for me to demonstrate this, so I'm just going to try to say it before I make a video on the whole tumblers. That's going to be in a later video. This one's going to be like the beginning parts of resin. But it's self-leveling, so you're not going to have a lot of those waves and stuff. Obviously, if you just pour it on there and you don't smooth it, you will have that, but it levels itself a lot easier. Like I said, there's no yellowing, and it doesn't have an odor. So I have never had a reaction to it. The people that I know that have used it have never had a reaction to it. The biggest thing I want to stress is that no matter what type of resin that you are using, obviously there is a chance that you can have a reaction, so please be careful. I highly recommend, if you're trying out a resin, to use your face covering, and that's not just a face mask. That is the ones that are like the respirators that you use for painting and things like that. I also recommend wearing long sleeves and gloves. My go-to glove are these Microflex Midnight. These are my absolute favorite. They are powder-free, nitrile. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but they're thicker, and so I really like these ones. And we're going to make a few pieces today, but this again is just going to be the beginning intro to resin. So with your personal protection equipment, your PPE, you also want to make sure that when you're first starting out that you have it in a well ventilated area, so windows open, fans going, anything like that, and make sure that you don't have anyone else around you that doesn't have personal protection equipment. So let's say like your kiddos are by you or something like that, you want to make sure that everyone that is around you, if you do choose to do it inside, that everyone around you is safe. I prefer silicone, like mixing everything. So mixing cups, silicone mats, I prefer all of those because they are so easy to clean. They come in a ton of different sizes, so you can have like these, you can have these little cups. I have some larger ones that we are going to use later. And they're super easy. As soon as the resin's dry, you just pop the dried resin. If you have any excess out, it's super easy to clean up. Same with the mats. I will show you those here in a little bit as well. There's a ton of different ways that you can use colorants with resin. So you can do resin dye, you can do mica powders, you can do alcohol inks, there's so many ways that you can customize it. You can put jewels in it, glitter, there's so many ways. What we're going to do today are 3 different ways. One is going to be a mica powder, the second is going to be an alcohol ink, and the third is going to be the resin dye. All of those you can mix glitter in with them. I use Itsy Bitsy glitter for all of my glitter needs because Whitney is amazing and her glitters are just top notch. I actually have, this one is currently my favorite. This is called Wicked Kryptonite and it has a beautiful chameleon to it. And I just love her. She's amazing. So I will add all of her info in the comments as well. When it comes to alcohol inks, I prefer Marabu. These ones. I have also used Pinata alcohol inks and they're okay. There are a ton of alcohol inks that I don't feel are up to the hype because they will, instead of dispersing that color, they just beat up kind of. I don't really know how to explain it, but they don't really give you that bright, vibrant color that I like with the Marabu and the Pinata alcohol inks. Also, Tim Hortons is really good. So I will link a few different brands that I've used in the comments here as well. Silicone molds are my absolute favorite when it comes to resin work. Just make sure whatever mold you are using, it is for resin, because some of them you can use like the chocolate or fondant. Some of those molds you can put resin in. Others, the resin will actually eat through that mold. Also, if you are going to do tumblers and you only have plastic tumblers, you I cannot stress this enough. And I'm talking about like the plastic Starbucks cups or any of those. Please do not put resin on that. The resin will eat through that plastic and then your customer is ingesting resin. Even if it's food grade, they should not be ingesting resin. That's like, especially little particles, that's a no-no. If you see anyone doing that, please tell them to not do that. It gives me such anxiety when I see that. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna get off my little horse there. So silicone molds, just make sure that it is resin. It can be used with resin because resin it can be so toxic. It can be toxic as soon as you open the container, as soon as you're mixing it. There's some resins that as it's curing, until it's fully cured, it's toxic. You just want to really make sure that you are doing your research and making sure that whatever you are using is safe. And if it is not safe, then make sure that you're doing like the proper PPE. And what I'm meaning by that is that if it does have an odor, it does have something like that, but it is safe after it's cured, that you're not sending it to the customer before that full cure time. Some of them 72 hours, some of them is 7 days. So it just kind of depends. So make sure that from the time that you start working with it to the time that it gets to the customer, that there's no chance of it being toxic. That's, I think, one of the biggest pet peeves of mine is that it's so easy to get resin, and there are some very inexpensive resin kits on Amazon and things like that, and then people aren't doing the research, and it's so dangerous. And so I always feel it's a responsibility of small business owners that do resin, that we need to be letting people know that it is so toxic and it can be so dangerous, because it can make your eyes swell shut, it can close your windpipe, it can cause serious allergic reactions like on your chest and your face. Like it can be bad. So just make sure that you're just researching that. So we had talked about the resin also. So we're going to mix resin and everything as well. I know I'm kind of like a space cadet right now. This is just how my mind works. Just stay with me. I promise it's worth it. So my resin, the Art and Glow, it comes in 2 different parts. You have your epoxy and then you have your resin. So part A and part B. You want to always make sure that when you're mixing it, that you're mixing it in 2 separate containers. So you have part A in one and part B in a second one, and then you'll combine them. The reason for that is you want to make sure that you have the exact same amount of part A and part B. If you don't, then it's not going to cure correctly. There are some fast set resins that will set within an hour, and you have to be so careful, because if you work with that for any, like, if you work with it too long, it can get very hot, and it will melt things. So just make sure that you're reading how long it's going to cure, how long the work time is with it. So for Art and Glow, it's 45 minutes. So from the time that I pour A and B in together, I have 45 minutes to be done with whatever it is, and then just walk away. So I always let my items sit for 12 to 24 hours. So if it's a tumbler and I need to have more than one coat of sealer on it, if it's on like its final coats, so I'll let it sit for 12 hours and then I'll put another coat on it. But if it's anything else, I let it sit for 24 hours, make sure it has a good nice cure on it. If when you're trying to unmold it, it's bendy, don't touch it. Just let it sit there, it's not done yet. Same with the tumblers, is if as soon as you touch it, you're leaving fingerprints, it's not ready, you just need to let it sit for a little bit longer. Resin also is temperamental, so it doesn't like to be too cold and it doesn't like to be too hot. And so you want to make sure that when you're working with it, that I keep my house at about 72 degrees, which may seem hot to people, but I'm also in Colorado, so it's like -16 all the time. So you want to make sure that it's a nice temperature, because if it's too cold, it's not going to cure. If it's too hot, it's not going to cure. So you just want to make sure that you're being safe with that as well. So without further ado, let's go and start making some stuff. So like I said, we're just gonna make some easy little keychains today. I'm going to do one with a mica, one with an alcohol ink, and a second one with the resin dye, just so that you can see the difference. I will upload part 1 to this video today, so that if you have any questions, we can work those out, and then part 2 will be tomorrow or the next day, once we're able to demold the items, and so you can see the difference. So let's get into it. So first things first, we are going to get our gloves, because you always want to start with your hands protected. I am going to be moving, you guys, so I apologize if I make you seasick. Also, I'm not very good at editing videos yet, so I'm sorry if this is a super long video. Okay, and I also wanted to show you guys kind of what we're looking for when we are working with resin. So this is an alcohol ink piece, and I'm going to try to get this as close as I can without the glare, so that you can see these little dots right here. So with alcohol ink, you can get more of that dimension, and almost looks a little bit space-like. I don't really know if that makes sense, but and then this is with mica powder and glitter, so you get that full coverage, I apologize, and you can't see through it, it's not very translucent, whereas this, there are some pieces of it that are translucent because it's just the alcohol ink. And then this guy is with resin dye, and so you get that all over color as well. So those are the different options. So we'll be right back. Okay, so we have our molds here. Here are our silicone mats. These are the ones that we are going to be working on today. So I am going to grab my resin and my measuring cups. And as I said, so you can see if there's some resin left in there. All I have to do is just pop that piece out, and boom, clean and ready to go. There are some times that it might get a little bit sticky if you use just a little bit of part A or part B and not everything. I apologize about that. And it doesn't fully cure in that cup. So I'm going to go in, so we are going to make, also one huge thing I always recommend whenever you get new silicone cups is to take a marker, and I say that and I don't have a marker here, but take a marker and mark your 2, your 4, your 6, and your 8, so that when you use the resin, you can actually, because this one's super dirty, I need to wash this actually. But when you put the resin in there, you won't be able to see the numbers anymore. I have been doing this quite a while, so I know exactly where all the numbers are. But I highly recommend doing that. It will save you so much headache. So I'm going to do 4.5 milliliters of part A. You also want to make sure that this is on a flat surface so that you get an accurate pour. Some people will also measure it based off weight instead of just the little lines to get an accurate measurement as well. And remember how I said earlier, we want to pour part A and part B into 2 separate containers and then pour them in together. Also, wooden sticks, you can get these at the dollar store, at Walmart. These are your best friend. They're super inexpensive and they are able to handle the resin. I also want to point out, if you do use different types of mixing containers, if you use a plastic, make sure that you have multiple cups with it. So if you have one layer, you want to make sure that you put another layer of a cup there, otherwise the resin can eat through that. Like Dixie cups are okay, but some of the ones from the dollar store that I had gotten, the resin ate through that, and that's why it's so important that we don't use resin on plastic. So we're going to go ahead and mix this. We're going to mix this for between 3 to 7 minutes. And you want to mix it slowly, and you also want to be scraping the sides and the bottom to make sure that you have everything mixing. The slower that you mix it, and I don't mean like time-wise, I mean the slower strokes, I guess, that you make, the less bubbles that you will have. And I should have said this in the beginning, but when you start your project, you want to make sure that you have your silicone mat, your silicone cups, your mixing utensils, your gloves, your personal protection equipment, whatever molds you are going to be using, whatever colorant you are going to be using. And you want to make sure that everything is all set up so that you can do this very efficiently. So you can see, and you want to stir it until it is clear. So right now it's pretty murky. Let's see if I can get you guys to see that without spilling it. So you can see it's a little bit murky, but we want to stir this until it is clear. The reason that you want to have everything already set up for when you get into this is so that because you don't have a ton of time to work with the resin, you want to make sure that you already have everything ready so that you can pour the resin, mix it, and then start your actual pour. And don't forget to be scraping those sides. Okay, so now that we've been stirring for a couple minutes, we are going to pour this one into this because we want to make sure that we have everything super well incorporated together. You can also, if you don't have 2 silicone cups, you can always put it into like 2 plastic cups, like layer the cups like this to do it that way. Now we're going to do the same thing. You also want to make sure, so if you're able to, heat guns, the little portable heat guns. So I have one here. I have several actually, but heat guns are amazing. Also 91% isopropyl alcohol. That will help to pop all of the bubbles in your resin. But if you do not have the 91%, it will not work very well. And we'll talk about, I'll show you guys how to spray to make sure that you get everything. Because you want your resin to be crystal clear. And there are those, there's some places that sell the little cup or the automatic turners. I have used those and I personally am not a fan, just because every time I've used it, my resin doesn't cure correctly. And so it could just be the type that I have, but I prefer to just do it by hand. Okay, we've been stirring for a bit. Let's go ahead and pour it back in here. You want to scrape the sides, make sure that you're not missing anything. And I actually just washed my silicone mats today because they were quite disgusting. Have a little bit longer to stir. And I wish I was able with my ring light to actually like move you guys up enough to where you could see inside of the resin jar, but that is okay. We will make this work. So you can see my consistency is getting a lot better. Okay, so this is just about mixed, and then we are going to let it sit for about a minute or two after it's done mixing, so that we can start getting those bubbles out of it. The bubbles will rise to the very top of it, and so then you can just spray your alcohol and then continue on with the colorant. But while we wait, we can go ahead and start to color. I personally do not like to touch colors while my gloves are dirty, so I switch gloves quite often. Also, if you go onto Amazon, you can get boxes of these cups for really inexpensive. Just look for disposable cups. Some people will use like little medicine cups. It's really completely up to you on what you want to use. Just make sure that whatever it is, you're just being safe with it. Okay, so I have a ton of colors. And I also want to say, so these are called chameleon mica powders. These will only work if you have a black background. So you put this on first, so usually you'll etch it, then put a black background on first, and then these will turn a chameleon color. You can also get chrome pigments like this. There's micas like this, where they have a color shift. Here are some resin dyes. And then here are the alcohol inks. I'll be honest, I don't really know the true difference between the resin dye and the alcohol ink, but what I can say is that the resin dye, when it comes to, if you want more of a translucent and not a full coverage color, that's your go-to. The alcohol inks, those have more of like the little dots that we had shown earlier where you want to make like a cool design or something like that. And you can color your resin with the alcohol ink. I just prefer to do more of a abstract with alcohol inks. can see, we're getting some bubbles here. Sorry, I don't have a very good setup right here. I'm gonna put some paper towels down. I do this just to kind of protect my silicone mats a little bit more as well. Okay, so and what I'm going to do is we are going to do so the 3 different styles, and then I will pour it here so that you all can see, and then I will move it to the back, and then we'll just rotate it that way. I'm also going to move you guys, so if you get motion sickness, just look away for a second. Maybe this will work. Okay. So we have our bubbles here, and we're going to find the alcohol ink that I just had right here. I just put mine in this bottle, and you just spray it, and the bubbles disappear. We're actually going to do this 6 different ways because I want to show it with just the alcohol ink, just the dye, and then I want to add glitters as well. You know what? We can just add the glitter after. So we're going to separate this into our 3 cups. Apologies about the neighbor's dog. Woof! Don't spill your resin. In this house, we do not waste resin. Okay, so for our first one, let's do, I wanted to see if I had a blue dye. Okay, so this first one is going to be a clover resin dye. So we are going to add this in. So this is 4 to 5 drops, so we're going to mix it up so that you can see the difference. Another wooden stick. So as you can see, those 4 to 5 drops did not get all of the resin. So we're going to go in with a few more. Also, you can color it depending on what look you're going for. If you want it to be kind of translucent with just a little bit of color, you know, that's the amazing part with resin, is it's whatever you want to make it. Okay. So, first thing that we are going to do is with this, I want to make sure that all of the color is in there, and I'm happy with the color that it is right now. And we are going to do half of this without glitter. And then add some of this Wicked Kryptonite from Itsy Bitsy Glitter. Also, when it comes to colorants, mica powders, glitters, etc., you want to make sure that it is still like a runny consistency like this. You don't want it to be too thick, because if it is too thick, it's not going to cure correctly. And we're going to pour. And then make whatever little design you want to do. I always like if I put a glitter, if you do kind of like an ombre with a glitter, I always like to kind of drag it to the place that it doesn't have any glitter, just so it kind of incorporates it all together. Also, while you're working with resin, make sure that you're wearing clothing that you do not mind if it gets dirty. Okay, so we're gonna let this sit. I already see that we have some bubbles, but that's okay. We're gonna let it sit until for a minute while we do the rest. So with this one, this is actually for an order, so I'm going to do a little bit, since we have some extra. Let me move you guys here. I'm going to do just a thin layer, because I'm going to do a little bit of alcohol ink. This is more of an advanced, so please, if you don't feel comfortable, and you don't really have to be comfortable with resin. You can just, whatever makes you happy, you know? So when I do this and put it on like that, there will be droplets that you can see when we demold it. And you'll understand what I mean when we demold it, because it may not make sense right now, but just wait until we demold it. Okay. Our next one, because that was a resin dye along with resin dye with glitter. So we're gonna move this over here. Move this one right here again, so you can see that we have some bubbles forming, and that's okay because we can take care of that. So the next thing that we are going to do is with alcohol ink. So I'm going to do this 3 different ways with the alcohol ink. One is I am just going to put some droplets down here on the actual, on there. This is just clear resin, no glitter. Okay. And then we are going to do it where we add the alcohol ink into the resin. And you can see that the alcohol ink is a lot like the resin dye, where it takes a little while for it to be completely pigmented. I do think that it doesn't take as much alcohol ink as it does resin dye. And this one we're going to go in with Because of You from Itsy Bitsy Glitter. This is a nice fine white glitter. Oh, sorry. Before we do that, we're going to put just the alcohol ink on here. And go ahead and mix that, make sure that it is completely incorporated. And we're gonna drag these again. Just a, I apologize, just a little bit though, because I want you guys to be able to see this tomorrow on how alcohol inks will look. So we are going to move this over here again, bring this one over here, and do the same thing. We're gonna add a little bit of blue and a little bit of green. Also, depending on the way that you add the alcohol ink into the resin, so how I just did that where I put the 2 drops, and then I did it where I actually kind of flung it. When you fling it like that, you are going to get more of the, almost like a droplet of rain. And I really, really enjoy doing that because it gets a different type of dimension that I really, really like. Okay, put this one back over here, and our next one, our last one, is going to be with mica powder. So I have this Color Shift mica powder in the shade Light Blue. So we're going to do this the same way where we do one half with no glitter and then the other half with glitter. And as you can see, we do have some bubbles, and that's okay. We're going to do 2 scoops. Again, the colorant and how much you add into it is completely up to you on how much color you want into it. I love anything that's color shift or like color changing, that's my jam. So this gives kind of a pearlish color. Make sure that's really mixed. Okay. Same thing of doing about half. And then we're going to add Immortal by Itsy Bitsy Glitter. For a little bit of a teal color. And this will help, actually we're going to add a little bit of this Witchy Kryptonite too because it has a color shift. It's going to add a little bit more dimension to it, and I think it's going to be beautiful. Mixy mixy. And remember with whatever you're doing, so either mica powders or colorant, whatever it is, make sure that you are completely scraping the sides, you're scraping the bottom to make sure that it is completely mixed in. Because the worst thing is when you pour something and then you demold it just to find out that some of the powder didn't fully dissolve or something like that, and you're just like, well, here we are, I guess. And same thing, do a little swirl. Also, I get most of my molds off of either Amazon, Etsy, Itsy Bitsy does molds as well. There's several places that I get molds from. Okay, so back to this guy. This is going to be so pretty. The thing I think I love the most about resin is how there's so many people that can do like the same type of mold or the same type of, you know, whatever it is, but we all have our own artistic view on it and different ways to do it, and I love it. Okay, so we have all of these, and you can see that we have bubbles. So I'm going to bring you guys closer so you can see the bubbles here. So we are going to take our 91% alcohol, wherever I set it. I would like to say this doesn't happen a lot, but it really does. Okay, and watch this. No bubbles. So you can also do that with a heat gun. However, some molds will actually fuse to the resin. And so you just want to make sure that if you do use heat, that you know that the mold will not melt. And then I usually let it sit for like 15-20 minutes, and then I'll just watch for bubbles to come. And whenever I see bubbles, then I just pop them. So here was part 1 to I guess, a beginner's guide to resin. I hope that I answered some questions. If not, if you have questions, please leave it in the comments. I want to help you guys. Anything I can do to help, I want to help. So come back tomorrow and we will be demolding these, and so we can see the difference in the resin dye, alcohol ink, the mica powder, and all of them with glitter. So if you have any questions, like I said, drop it in the comments or just reach out to me. And I look forward to doing this resin adventure with you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon.